Windows can be pretty creepy. I used to have just one window in my bedroom when we lived in the middle of nowhere. Looking outside, I would see only trees, but at night I would hear animals moving around in the brush just outside the walls, inches from me. Well, one person experienced something even more terrifying. Something who watched through their window. Joshua G. shares their story of the window watcher, giving us all good reasons to avoid our windows after dark. This took place from what I can remember 10 years ago. I was living in Wales at the time, and behind my house was a massive field, which you could walk to. It would lead you to the doctors and the church. At night, the field used to give me the creeps, as it would always be reflected in the dark as something you would see in a horror film, like the water glowing in the moonlight and the darkness casted over the field. Always made me wonder, what could be hiding out there? I was 12 years old at the time. I used to enjoy playing in the field with my dog Millie. She was a rough collie who was getting to quite an old age, but she had plenty of playfulness left in her old self. She and I went into the field at night. It was our nightly routine. To give an overview of my old house, there were steps from the back door to the road behind the back garden. You would walk past a tree line, then the metal gate to the field was there. We took a walk into the field one night, and it was quite fun. We did the usual games anyone would do with their dogs, like fetch the stick, run and chase, and other fun games. I really miss her. The field was only partially well lit that night by the nearby street lamps, but the back area was dark and quite spooky. I would often hear noises from the field which could range from howling to whispers, but I would shrug it off as a farmer and his animals, as across the small stream was a farm. When I was about to venture further into the field, Millie suddenly began to growl. Now, Millie was getting old, and her eyesight was partially gone by then, but she stayed almost still and snarling at something in the darkness. I said to her, "Calm down, girl. It's just the farmer and maybe his dog." But when I looked in the direction she was looking at, I froze. Standing there was a man, but the thing about the man was his arms and posture. The guy was hunched over, and his arms stretched to about his legs. I shouted out to him, "Hello? My dog means you no harm, I apologize. She's just not used to seeing anybody at this time of night." The guy muttered back to me part of it, saying under his breath, "Means no harm." Panic began to set in. I tried to play it off as me overreacting, but when the man changed, he was no longer a man. I saw parts of him tearing and breaking into different shapes. He fell down on his arms, and his back leg stretched up past his back. The human silhouette I was looking at was now gone, and replaced with something that resembled only vaguely a wolf. Then it screeched, forcing my hands quickly up to my ears to protect them from the awful noise. Then it jumped at us. I began to run with Millie in tow. We got over the fence with me lifting Millie over, who was very big, but not impossible to lift. I ran back through my garden, locked the gate, and ran up the stairs. I looked back from the top, and the thing was there partially illuminated in the light. I could see it staring at me, and then it ran back into the field. My dad heard the commotion and ran to the kitchen, asking me what was wrong. I told him, and he just told me that I was seeing things and to go to bed. I listened to him, and that night was full of creepy events. The first was around midnight. I was thirsty and went down for a glass of water. As I headed down to the kitchen, I heard a tapping at the back door. At first, I heard my dad's voice asking me to let him in, as he had forgotten his keys. I thought, wait a minute, my mom and dad would be asleep right now. in the room across from mine. I crept back through the lounge and back up the stairs to my room, then looked out my bedroom window, which overlooked my back garden, including the back door. I looked and there was the same man from the field before, but he was looking at me, and I quickly closed my window and drew my curtains. The man had a crooked mouth and eyes that glowed yellow from the street lamps. I hid under my covers, and eventually, maybe after a couple of hours, fell asleep. The second event happened the next night. I was in bed early after a long day of school, as well as multiple chores around the house, including walking the dog and shopping down at the local grocery. I fell asleep, but around 1 in the morning, I woke up and decided to play some PS2. I believe I was playing Resident Evil 4 and was enjoying the game when I muttered under my breath, "Just a zombie." Then I heard a voice trying to mimic what I had said. "Just a zombie." I paused my game and was shaking as I noticed that that was the same voice from the previous night. I looked outside the window, and it was there again, the man or not-so-man thing. I could see its silhouette peeking in through my window, and it stayed there until it moved an hour later and I was able to get some sleep. Finally, the last event occurred when I was at home on my own. My dad was working, and my mom went to see my cousin a few miles away, so I was home alone. I was playing on my trampoline, and then went to my room to have a gaming night. My dad was not due to be home until midnight, and my mom would pick him up after he caught the bus to his job, which was about 15 miles away in another town. I settled down with a big pizza and my own custom-made Coke mango mix, with ice in a big pint glass. I was playing some games, when all of a sudden, I heard a knock at the back door, and thought, maybe Mom forgot something. I made my way down, and then I froze. Wait, Mom went to see my cousin, and my dad was working late tonight. Even if they wanted to come back, it wouldn't be this early, as the buses stopped after 6. I recalled the last 2 nights with that thing, and I peeked behind the lounge door, but I saw nothing. I thought it was my imagination, but then someone called my name. It said it in the same eerie voice as before. "Joshua." I looked at the back door again, and the thing was there. Millie was barking at it after it began tapping, and I called her to quietly follow me. She listened and came to me, whimpering, but I told her it'd be okay. I took her and my cat, who was hissing at the thing, upstairs, and I locked the door. I waited there for so long, lights off and windows drawn. I then heard more of those gross snapping sounds, as the thing was probably changing again. It freaked me out so bad that I got up and checked the door again, just to make sure it was locked. Then came the screeching. I looked out the window, and I saw its silhouette speeding off into the fields. Luckily, right after that, I saw the headlights of my mom and her car pulling up behind the back gate. I ran out to ask her if she had seen that, but she said she hadn't. I was relieved at least to see my mother, but was irritated by what I alone kept witnessing. Almost 7 years later at 19, I had to know what I saw all those years ago, and after asking around and explaining my experiences, people were telling me that it sounded like the Skinwalker from America. Surely it couldn't be that. But after some research and thought, I realized that many different cultures have their own shapeshifters, and the UK is no exception. All in all, I'm happy we moved back to England. Whenever I do visit this area, the field has been locked firmly, and I choose to keep my distance. I just hope no one fell victim to that human wolf-changing thing.